Day is. All right, good morning. It's March 20th, second day of spring, and this is the Senate Health and Welfare Committee. So this morning, we're going to be looking at a couple of bills related to compact licensure. And Representative Chena is here to introduce the first one, so I'll let you do that.
Yeah, so I'm here today. So this is Representative Brian Chena from Burlington. For those of you who don't know me well, I represent Chittenden 15. And so that's most of the East District of Burlington and then part of the Old North End, which is the part of the district that I live in. And I'm here today to briefly introduce the Social Work Interstate Licensure Compact Bill. I'm a clinical social worker, so I was asked by the National Association of Social Workers Vermont chapter to introduce the bill once the language was ready for it. Before the language was ready for it, though, we did introduce a short form bill because we feel very strongly that we want to be part of the founding group of this interstate licensure compact. And so you probably have heard a lot about interstate licensure compacts already. So you probably don't need me to tell you how they work. And I think that legislative council would be best to talk about the unique mechanics of this bill. There's certain details of it that vary from others, but maybe I'll just take a minute to talk about the profession that would be impacted. So you probably hear from people who are social workers all the time, but social workers do a wide range of things. We practice on the individual level, the group level, family level, organizational and community level, and that can look like many different things. What this bill would mostly do is expand the practice of social work. I would expect, considering the current economy and dynamics of the healthcare system, that this bill would mostly impact us by increasing access to clinical social workers for mental health treatment, substance use disorder treatment, and psychotherapy, that particular way that we practice. But there are additional benefits of having more social workers practicing across state lines. Because in addition to working with individuals and families, social workers might serve to run groups for people who, let's say, are transitioning out of incarceration, or run groups for parents trying to learn parenting skills, or run support groups for people. Social workers might and often do work in the organizational structure of organizations, serving as supervisors, serving as executive directors. On the community level, social workers do community organizing and an example maybe I'll give you was in my neighborhood, we have a group called Is Good, Isham Street Gardening and Other Optimistic Doings. And
Chickens.
we've talked about this before.
Yes, I know you do chickens.
Oh, I do have chickens, so it's true. We don't have community chickens yet, though. That's not a bad idea. We should have a community chicken coop coming. We can just let them freely range the city. So.
Burlington chicken.
You know what happens, because Senator, you know what happens. You see it, especially in New York Park. You see them like blocking North Ave sometimes, like, so, but
Got her giggling. It's gonna be.
it's true though, if you come visit, you'll see in the summer, like sometimes you have to wait because chickens are standing in the middle of the road anywhere in Burlington. It is Vermont still, contrary to popular opinion. So that being said, it is good. We do community organizing where we work, using social work theory, we organize neighbors to start community gardening, and then the community gardening improved human behavior, which led to reduced crime. And then we wrote a grant with the police. Oh, we didn't get the grant. We were going to try to implement it around the city. Now we are in a new partnership with a professor at UVM to use his grants and his class to expand this work. But I give it as an example of community level social work. So that's an additional benefit we may get from bringing social workers to Vermont, even though the major benefit you're going to get is healthcare providers. So I think I said enough about social work. I didn't mean to get into a big tangent about that, but it's warming up your brains for the real information you need to process, which is the language of this bill. I'm looking to Katie, hoping that you're ready to come up and walk through it with the committee, because I think that I would mess it up if I tried to explain the detailed mechanics of this compact bill, so I will need to try.
That's okay, and I'll bet you do a great job.
I'd probably make you laugh a lot, but I don't know how much
Yeah.
information.
And we like the chickens, Bill.
No,
We like community organizers.
Can I-
Yes,
just want to thank the representative for the testimony. That anecdote was really helpful and because we think of social workers as doing like one thing.
Yeah,
And you really gave us like this whole continuum of work and that was really helpful. Thank you.
yeah, and you know what I forgot in the midst of that, which would be a good transition out of this chair, is that we also serve in legislative bodies, and there's actually a word in that when it was legislative practices, meaning like in all areas of policy making. I think that's what, so we do practice advocacy policy making. And so you've seen social workers serve beside you, such as we have a social worker who was chair of human services in the House, Ways and Means. We currently have a member on judiciary in the House, myself, on healthcare, and you have a senator who's a social worker who's, I think, on government operations and another committee that I can't remember.
Judiciary.
Well, you all knew that, I mean, the hysteria.
we.
Yeah. Yeah, so we also, you know, I don't know if you would like this or not, but you might get more social workers here too through this interstate licensure compact. So on that note,
Thank you.
the social worker will move and make room for the lawyer.
Thank you very much,
Thanks.
Representative Tina. Katie, here you are.
Good morning.
Right.
Katie McGlynn, Office of Legislative Counsel. Let me pull up the document.
Okay.
Actually, I have two documents. I have a section by section summary and I have the actual bill. They're both posted. Because the bill is very dense, I might go through the section by sections.
That's a very good idea.
Okay, great.
We've done compacts.
You have. You've done a lot of. There's a committee with
done a lot.
expertise in compacts. It's this committee.
Trend the last few years, more and more.
So, just to refresh your memory a little bit, a compact is an agreement between states. And by adopting this standard, set of language that other states also have the option to adopt, you are, well, one, you can't really change the language. It's an up or down vote. You want to enter the compact or you don't. But you have an agreement that social workers, from the partnering states or the adopting states could practice in each other's states, and that process for practicing in other states is easier. One thing to note about this compact, and I know that you're gonna hear from OPR and they'll do a much better job of explaining this than I will, but that there are different types of compacts. There are privilege versus multi-state model compacts. Privilege being that the out-of-state practitioners pay to practice in Vermont, and that's what most of the compacts you saw last year are. This is the multi-state model, meaning that Vermont multi-state holders pay the cost of the compact, and that Vermont practitioners are paying to practice out of state and other compact states.
So are they paying the other state as well as their own state?
I believe they're paying in their home state to practice out of state.
Okay,
And
so that would add revenue support for OPR theoretically.
I think that's a better question for OPR to address. Yeah.
Yeah, and Lauren Lehman is somewhere on Zoom. with
Right.
us. We'll get to
Okay.
those questions.
Okay. So to bring you back to our section by section summary, we're creating a new subchapter in Title 26, Chapter 61, which is the social work chapter. And it's a subchapter devoted to the compact. First, we have language that Vermont is formally adopting the compact. And then we go into the purpose. So it lists multiple purposes within the language. An excerpt is that it facilitates interstate practice of regulated social workers by improving public access to social services, reduces duplicative requirements associated with holding multiple licenses, promotes mobility to address workforce shortages, and allows for the use of telehealth to facilitate increased access to regulated social work services. There is a definition section, which we could look at if you have an interest, and then we have what does it look like for the state to participate in the compact? So to be eligible for compact participation, the member state has to license and regulate social work as either clinical master's or bachelor's category. Require applicants for licensure to graduate from a program meeting certain criteria. Require applicants for clinical licensure to complete a period of supervised practice and have a mechanism for receiving, investigating, and adjudicating complaints about licensees. And then to maintain membership in the compact.
Go ahead.
It's okay to ask questions for you.
Sure.
Okay, so to be eligible.
Mhm.
But I don't quite understand the first bullet about whether we have to decide if it's clinical masters or bachelor's category.
You have to have a regulatory scheme for either clinical masters or
So is there a
bachelors.
recommendation in the bill to
I
pursue one avenue versus another?
believe you already have, this is a better question for OPR, but I believe it's already clinical and masters category that you have.
Okay.
I know there's already 2 categories that you have and one that you don't have, and I'm trying to remember if it's clinical and masters or
Oh,
bachelors.
okay, that's good.
Bachelors.
So the second bullet, completing a period of supervised practice, any idea if this was meant to be in-state or if this is just whatever state you're from that's in the compact, that you have to have
Don't know.
supervised practice
Hmm.
while you're getting your original licensure?
I think it's the latter. I'm looking to see if there is language that specifies.
Yeah, if that's an OPR question, it's fair.
Let me see if it's in the language, so require. Graduate from our program. Doesn't say, require applicants for clinical licensure to complete a period of supervised practice. This is under, yeah, not under the schooling. So that's all it says in the compact, it doesn't specify if it's in state or out of state.
Thank
Okay, so maintaining membership in the compact, the member state has to require applicants for a multi-state license to pass a qualifying national exam for the corresponding category of multi-state license sought. Participate in the commission's data system, so just to remind you about how these compacts are structured, there's usually a governing entity that is made up of members from each of the member states, so that in this case of the commission. And as in what the other compacts we've looked at, they maintain a data system with membership and license data from all of the participating folks in member states.
you. And maybe a question for Representative Chena, does that body exist already? So does that national exam exist?
So there are 2 different things. Let me answer the question about the commission, and I don't know the answer about the national exam if you do. But the compact, often when we look at compacts, it's already an existing compact that has taken effect. You need so many states to join before it takes effect. This is a new compact, so where they're still at the stage of having the first states join, I think it was 7, but don't quote me, have to join before the compact takes effect. So at this point, there will be a commission once all of the initial states sign on and agree to participate in the compact.
Good.
And do you want to say something about the exam? I can't answer that question.
So I am gonna, this is Representative Chena for the record, and I'm gonna, what's the word? Use a website just to confirm what I believe. So I looked up, it's the Association of Social Work Boards, ASWB, that makes an exam. And the current, I know I took the master's level license, licensing exam, but there are other kinds of exams, I think. Are you a social worker? Yeah, so,
So the question, would it be, something that OPR would decide as to which exam or multiple exams would be appropriate for this?
It's OPR
Or
with
would
us.
that be on the governance board level? I mean, so that's a question we may wanna
yeah.
chat to Lauren later.
Because our OPR was part of the creation of
Yeah.
the language behind the bill with other states, so like they really are better equipped to answer that.
Good. Okay, so we'll make sure you keep these questions, Senator, if it's gonna go through our. Great.
Okay, so continuing on for what you need to maintain membership, notifying the commission of any adverse action or availability of hard significant investigative information regarding a license. Implement procedures for considering criminal history records of multi-state license applicants. Comply with commission tests. Require an application to obtain or retain a license in the home state and meet the home state's qualifications for licensure or renewal of licensure. Authorize a licensee holding a multi-state license in a member state to practice in accordance with the compact and commission terms, because remember the commission, as in other commissions, can adopt the rules. Designate a delegate to participate in commission meetings. A member state is to designate the categories of social work licensure that are eligible for issuance of a multi-state license, that's the clinical, master's, bachelor's. And how many states may charge a fee for granting, home states may charge a fee for granting a multi-state license. And then we turn to what does a social worker have to do to participate in the compact? So to be eligible for the multi-state license, an applicant, regardless of their category, must hold or be eligible for an active unencumbered home state license. Oh, Lauren's here. Pay applicable fees, including any state fees, submit fingerprints or other biometric data, notify home state of any adverse action, encumbrance, or restriction on professional licenses taken by any member or non-member states within 30 days of the action, meet continuing competence requirements established by the home state, abide by the laws and regulations where the client is located at the time the care is rendered. An applicant for a full, for a clinical category multi-state license must have the passage of a clinical category qualifying national exam, the applicant licensure in the applicant's home state as a clinical category, beginning prior to the national exam requirement by the home state, or substantial equivalency of the foregoing competency requirements that the commission determines by rule. The individual has to attain at least a master's degree in social work and fulfill a practice requirement that's 3,000 hours, 2 years of clinical supervised practice, or the substantial equivalency.
So, and this is a question for OPR and perhaps Representative Chena, that's a lot of hours. And does that include practicum that folks have gone through? No, so it's afterwards, and do you get paid for that work of your 2 years of clinical experience? Or this has been a concern of mine for masters in mental health counseling as well. So it's in here, so it's not something that can be changed, but certainly something of concern if you've got folks who have been through a series of practical application and then another 2 years of clinical supervision in one spot and trying to find someone to supervise you. I mean, you have to fit into some practice somewhere, right?
There's many ways this gets done.
Yeah.
You wanna hear like just a brief explanation?
Yeah,
So like the way, when I got I'll just speak from personal experience, I got it in an unconventional way. Like often people will work full-time in an agency with a supervisor who's a social worker and then they see them an hour a week and they do what we do, they do the self-reflection and setting
like
goals.
really practical.
Yeah, and then at the end, they sign the forms, but I worked at an agency when I got out of graduate school that did not have a clinical social worker on the staff, but there was a clinical mental health counselor who was the clinical director. And so he was able to provide supervision, but then I wanted a social worker too, so then one of my former professors decided to run a pro bono social work peer supervision group. And so I did half my hours with her, half with him, and I did it over the course of 4 years instead of 2, even though I worked. So I had whatever the amount is, I worked 40 hours a week, 37.5 hours a week for 4 years. And I got it that way. So there is flexibility about how you do it, but I don't think it's bad that you have to do it over the amount of time you do, or that you have to do that many hours before you get a license, because it's very complicated work and you have to deal with really heavy, serious things. And it takes time to like be, even as an independent clinical social worker, I will seek peer supervision from other social workers all the time. Cause the content of what we have to deal with is very grave, very, we're talking about people, life or death and people's human suffering and like, and also like liberation, how to break free from these bonds. And so I think, it's good for now. And if the National Commission or whatever it's gonna be called, changes its mind, we'll see what they suggest.
Right. So it sounds like a separate issue, and I also think about folks who are, have been in another profession and switching gears and how long it takes for the older student or practitioner to become independent, so it's a
Yeah.
whole separate discussion.
Yeah,
Just a clarifying question for me. The home state in this case is Vermont.
Mhm, mhm. Okay, then we have our requirements for master's category for the multi-state license. There you go. The multi-state license for a regulated social worker subject to the home state's renewal requirements. A regulated social worker services in a remote state are subject to the member state's regulatory authority, including in accordance with due process, removing the social worker's multi-state authorization to practice in the remote state for a specific time, the imposition of fines and any other necessary actions. And if a multi-state license and authorization to practice is encumbered, the social worker's multi-state license to practice shall be deactivated in all remote states until there's no longer that encumbrance. Then we have language about issuing a multi-state license. So upon receipt of a multi-state license application, the home state licensing authority shall determine applicant's eligibility for a multi-state license. If eligible, the home state shall issue a multi-state license authorizing the applicant or a regulated social worker to practice in all member states until multi-state authorization to practice, under multi-state authorization to practice, I'm sorry. Upon receiving that licensure, the home state shall designate whether regulated social workers hold a multi-state license in bachelor's, master's, or clinical category of social work. And a multi-state license issued by a resident's home state shall be recognized by all compact member states under the multi-state authorization to practice, corresponding with the category that the member state has recognized the person as being. Next, we have the authority of the commission and the member state licensing authorities. So the compact does not reduce member states' ability to enact and enforce the rules and laws related to practice of social work and the state where the laws and rules where the laws and rules are not inconsistent with the compact. So Vermont continues to enforce Vermont laws and rules for social workers unless there's a clear inconsistency. The compact does not impact issuance or discipline of a single state license. So that's an important distinction. A social worker doesn't have to get a multi-state license if they don't want to. There will still be a single state license option, and a person can choose just to practice under a Vermont license.
Is there anything in here regarding telehealth or telemedicine? It's not telemedicine, it's telecounseling, but so is there anything in here regarding that remote access?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, it's authorized, it's in the purposes of the bill that one of the uses is to promote the use.
But so we'll have to, when we look at the bill, we'll have to see, then we'll talk with OPR about what they're.
Okay. The compact does not reduce the ability of a remote state to take an adverse action against a licensee's multi-state authorization to practice in that state. And the compact does not reduce the ability of a licensee's home state to take adverse action against a licensee's multi-state license based on information provided by a remote state. In terms of reissuance of a multi-state license by a new home state, a licensee can hold multi-state license in only one member state at a given time. So if your home state is Vermont, that's where you're holding your multi-state license. You can't hold a multi-state license in Vermont and Missouri at the same time. It's your place of residence where you hold that.
So you could, but you could still work in Missouri. You could-
If they're a compact state, you could do that, but your home state for the purposes of the multi-state license is where you're residing.
Senator Weeks, that's a question. Go.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So, multi-state license versus the compact, seems like two different vehicles to achieve the same purpose.
They're this one and the same, so by entering into the compact, you're allowing multi-state
Okay,
license.
so it's not a complete, okay, good, because a minute ago it sounded like when you're submitting your paperwork as a new clinician, you're checking a block on whether you want a multi-state license. So this is,
So let me try that one again. So if you want to be licensed in Vermont, if this were to pass, you would have the option to just have a in-state Vermont license. Or you could say, I want to practice in other states, I should seek the multi-state license, and then I could practice in Vermont and in other member
if this
states.
passes via the compact.
Via the compact, exactly, yeah. Okay. The compact does not impact a licensee's ability to hold multiple single state licenses at once. So you could hold a single state Vermont license, and if New Hampshire has a similar program where you can have a single state New Hampshire license, you can do that regardless of whether New Hampshire is in the compact or not. Military families. This enables a military member or spouse to retain a home state designation while the member is on active duty. So if the family is being relocated, the initial state designation remains the home state. Adverse actions. A remote state has the authority to take adverse action against a regulated social worker's multi-state authorization to practice only within the member state. Only a home state may take action on an individual's multi-state license. If the adverse action is taken, the licensee's authorization to practice in all member states is deactivated until encumbrances are removed. Home state shall give the same priority and effect to conduct reported from another member state when they do their own investigation. And a member state may take adverse action based on factual findings of another member state, so long as the member state follows its own procedures for doing that investigation. Member states can do joint investigations. And the compact does not authorize a member state to impose discipline against a regulated social worker holding a multi-state authorization to practice for lawful actions within another member state. And then we have the commission. So again, the commission is sort of composed of representatives from all of the member states who are meant to sort of oversee and be the governance structure for how the compact works in the member states. So this comes into existence after the effective date of the compact, which, as we said, the compact itself is not in effect yet because you need 7 states to join. And I think there's been at least one, I don't know if other states haven't passed it recently.
Just on that note, my sister is a social worker in Rhode Island, and she testified in their legislature last week on a bill in Rhode Island to join this compact, so there will be more soon.
We want to be one of the first 7, don't we? Yeah.
Yes.
Why?
For the record, Noel Langwell, joint fiscal. When I wrote my fiscal note, only one state at the time, Missouri, had adopted it. That's because it was very new and had happened outside of legislative sessions. But 19 other states had legislation pending. So there's an expectation that this is going to happen very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Does this go into effect on passage?
I believe so.
Yeah, we actually
Yeah,
changed
They
the,
changed it.
Yeah.
yeah, we changed it because we wanted to make sure we can get to the table early and
Yeah.
be part of the founding group.
The founding fathers and mothers.
So the benefit
Parents.
of being one of the first states is that Vermont, the Vermont delegate to be on the commission would be sort of an integral first person to help craft the first rules that govern the compact. So to the extent that somebody representing Vermont would be involved in that process, It's to the extent we get to the table first.
Okay.
OPR is on board with this, obviously.
I'll let OPR respond. Respond for
They're on
OPR.
our list, we'll get to them.
I know Lauren's in the Zoom room.
Yeah,
Is there any, are there any challenges, by the language in the bill outlining the duties and powers of the compact commission, being that if Rhode Island's doing their bill and they're not gonna dovetail 100%? You know, why are we trying to outline what the commission's duties are as opposed to just focusing on what Vermont's level of activity or responsibility would be as a compact state?
Do you mean why is this language about the commission in the bill?
Yeah.
It's part of the compact. It's part of what
So is it
you
identical?
adopt to.
Is it assumed to be identical
Yes.
in Rhode Island and who else?
When we do
Yeah.
compacts, we usually put it together, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
well, no, so when you join with other states, there's a governing board that oversees all the provisions, the rules, they'll develop the rules about all of this stuff. So what are the rules about collecting money? What are the rules that reflect what all compact states must do? So the advantage of, and it's for all the states, not just Vermont, but if Vermont's on the commission, then Vermont can influence the outcome of how things are purchased, what they own. I'm looking at all of the list up there. Hire employees, I mean, it could get topsy, but so with the being on the commission really gives the state some power in making decisions about policies and the conduct of the board and the social workers who are participating in work in other states.
Okay, I just want to make sure we weren't artificially creating a series of obstacles that were not intentional.
Yeah, no, I think, but no, I mean, and all the compacts that we've had in the past have a board that's overseeing them, whether it's physical therapists or do we have
Yeah, that-
physical therapists?
But
Physician assistants.
what I didn't recognize from previous conversations about compacts was that we were dictating the commission's charters or powers,
Yeah.
et cetera.
Oh,
So
I
that's
get
the change.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
the distinct change.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it is in other compacts of what are the responsibilities of the commission or the board. At least in the ones that we looked at last year, they had this governance structure and all of this is part of the language that all the states have to agree to. Just to sort of take a big step back to tell you a little bit about the process drafting with, compacts. There's usually an entity that has proposed model language, and that is the model language that states have to adopt. On my end, when a member says they want a draft that is a compact, we usually request to speak to the entity with the model language, and they usually have an attorney that likes to work with us to make sure we haven't made any changes that go beyond, so that all of the states are still consistent, that go beyond
That's good. Thank you.
technical changes.
Is there a section on benefits for Vermont?
There's a purposes section, so sort of that gives you some of the benefits to Vermont.
Might help manage some of the workforce issues.
Oh, it does.
Say,
Okay, so I'm gonna keep going. So we're looking at the commission. So we know that the commission comes into existence after the compact takes effect. It meets at least once annually, and then we have a list of the commission's powers. I can go through them. There's an interest.
No, we're good.
Okay, thank you. There's also an executive committee, so the commission outlines the duties of the executive committee and it describes processes for commission meetings. Then there's the data system. Again, this is similar to other compacts we've looked at where there's a central data system that's managed by the commission. And the commission's more of the board, but it's managed by the compact itself. And that collects data on who the members, the practitioners are taking advantage of this multi-state license. So the commission is to provide for the development, maintenance, operation, and utilization of this data system. It requires member states to submit uniform data sets to the data system on all individuals to whom the compact is applicable, including identifying information, licensure data, adverse actions, non-confidential information related to alternative program participation, any denial on application licensure, presence of current significant investigative information.
So Katie, so the data system is intended for the social workers. Data on the social workers, not on the patients.
Correct.
Right.
That's
Right.
to track who's practicing. You know, whether there's been any adverse actions taken in other states about them, yep. Member states are contributing information to the data system, they designate information that may not be shared with the public without express permission. And expunged data in accordance with federal or state law. Of the state contributing the information shall be removed from the database. So if Vermont has a law that certain information would have to be expunged in Vermont. Then that would be expunged in the central database too. Rulemaking, as we know from other compacts, the commission has the authority to adopt rules to implement the administration of the compact. A rule would have no effect where a majority of the member state legislatures objects to the rule or a portion of the rule within 4 years of its adoption. So the commission adopts a rule and states are not happy with the rule that has been adopted, then the state legislatures, a majority of the state legislatures have to take action to reject that rule within 4 years of adoption for the rule not to be effective. And then that section goes on to describe the rulemaking process. Oversight, dispute resolution, and enforcement. The executive and judicial branches of the member state are to enforce the compact. Judicial proceedings by or against the commission are brought in the jurisdiction that the commission is located. The commission provides notice of default to the member state that has defaulted on its obligations under the compact. And this section provides a process for state termination from the compact, dispute resolution, and legal enforcement of the contract. The effective date, as we've already noted, the compact takes effect on the date on which the statute is enacted by a 7th member state. A member state may withdraw from the compact by repealing the enacting the statute. And the compact does not invalidate or prevent a licensure agreement or cooperative agreement between a member and non-member state that does not otherwise have a conflict with the compact. So let's say Vermont wishes to enter into agreement with New Hampshire about licensure. New Hampshire chooses not to enter the compact. That doesn't stop Vermont from having a separate agreement specifically with New Hampshire, as long as it doesn't conflict with what's in the compact. There's language about the compact being liberally construed, provisions are severable. A licensee providing services in a remote state under a multi-state authorization to practice shall adhere to the laws and regulations of the remote state where the client is located at. Here, one section that was added that is not on this, so that is all of the language, the required language in the compact itself. OPR noted that they need authority to do background checks to on social workers to be consistent. So there is a section of the bill that adds to a list of other professions that they can already do background checks to social workers. And then the bill was amended to take effect on passage. Cool.
Near the top of the page. Yeah, the very first bullet. I know, I sense this is a generic template that was distributed to a variety of state legislatures, but shouldn't we annotate the law of the state to be like specifically VSA article, whatever this is? Don't we typically address?
So the compacts really can't be changed and personalized for the state. That's why the language is drafted the way it is without internal cross references to Vermont law.
Okay.
I'm sorry, are you referring to this language here or the actual bill? Cause this is a summary of paper, isn't it?
This is-
Oh, I'm not sure if it's in the bill or
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
It's not, it would say something similar.
Oh,
I can tell you exactly what it says, but I.
So 26 VSA, chapter 61, so chapter 30.
Right, that's where I codified it, but you're saying why is there no cross-reference to the specific Vermont law that
State
might
law.
deal with expungement, yeah. It's because the language is standard and has to sort of be adopted as a package without a lot of personalization.
It makes it look very easy and very hard.
So I've got it. This is a good start. What I'm gonna suggest is Nolan has to leave, so if we could just hear a brief fiscal note, that would be helpful, and we will come back to the bill. And we also have, Lauren, are you still on Zoom with us?
I am.
Okay, good. So after we hear from Nolan, we'll switch over to you.
Sounds good.
For the record, Noel Langwell, the fiscal office, and so because this compact is still very new and up and running, it was hard to estimate what the fiscal impact would be. If you recall, fiscal impact of these compact is loss of licensing and application fees, so these are negative revenue impacts. And I also mentioned that it is, as it is new, there's only one state that's passed it to date. And again, I was told that's because of the timing of when it went into effect and or when the language was finished, and it would happen outside of a lot of legislative sessions. But there's 19 states that have draft legislation, at least there was when I wrote this note. But once 7 states have enacted it, the commission will form the draft bill. So you've heard about that. Vermont renews social work licenses in January of even years, and the fee is $180. Revenues from those licenses are usually deposited to the professional regulatory fee fund, that's the OPR fund. According to OPR, there were 1,761 license LICSWs, license.
Social workers.
No, license.
Independent. Licensed
See-
independent clinical social workers.
It wasn't me.
And well, you were there too.
Okay.
And 103 LMSWs,
Masters?
like the license.
Licensed master social workers. Sorry, I thought you were pointing toward me.
Okay. Well, I'm pointing, I am pointing to you. Of those 529 LICSWs and 30 LMSWs reside in Vermont. Right? So 60% of those non-residents are from states that have either signed onto the social work compact or have legislation pending. So that's kind of how, and the estimation is again that this is going to take off very quickly. So the estimates were like, usually with these estimates, we say, okay, how many states are currently from, we have people that are licensed in Vermont from those states, but for this case, we sort of assumed, okay, how many are licensed and how many could be licensed in the short term, and then how many would be in the long term. So with that caveat, the low end loss of revenue would be at about 40,000. The high end would be 100,000. That assumes that every state, jumps onto this. So it's somewhere in the middle there, but we know that it'll be a revenue impact of some sort. What else do I want to say? So there's also a loss of application fees that could range between 4,300 and 12,000 annually. It will likely be in the lower end again in the early years, and could be higher in out years. The other thing that I like one thing that I often talk about when we have any big bills that affect OPR, whether it's the compacts or peer support or doulas even, I have to sort of toot the horn that it costs OPR money to do these things, and they don't have the money necessarily to do it now. I'll let Lauren talk about why they do or do not support it. I think they do. But I want to just sort of toot the horn, whatever you want to call it, that they do need money. And this will probably be about $10,000 in expenses to OPR. So I've been sort of working with the House appropriations folks to sort of kind of their sheet showing all the different bills coming that would affect OPR. So that hopefully that's sort of built into the budget contract, but I don't know what's gonna happen there, but. So it's not a decision for you to necessarily make, other than a recommendation to the appropriations committee, but I just have to say that out loud.
But along those lines, I've been thinking about that, and there are organizations in the state that benefit from the compact. So they may see an improvement in their workforce
Mhm.
needs.
Sure.
And so it may be that there's some way of chargeback, a bill back, an assessment that from specific types of organizations or organizations.
I don't know how we do that, Senator.
I don't know how we would do it
With
either.
OPR, I mean, these regulatory, they have ability to build back to places that they're regulated.
Yeah, no, and I'm probably feel back's the wrong word, but. assessment.
Fear tax.
Yeah, something, yeah,
Anyway,
something.
yeah. All right, I think that's really all I really want, but that's, I think most of it, the rest of it's in the note, I think. So,
Okay, thank you. So is that the note that
should be posted,
it's posted? Yeah.
should be, yes, as passed house.
Okay. All right, there's not much we can do to change the bill as it's written, but we can at least listen to OPR, answer our questions and what they need. Thank you thank you for
welcome.
staying around.
No problem.
All right. And I was gonna say questions, but I know no one has to be something else.
I can answer questions, all right.
Is there any burning question at this point? Okay, we're good. All right, Lauren, thank you for being here.
Thank you all. Lauren Lehman, General Counsel for OPR for the record. Thank you. I'm sorry I can't be there in person today. I had a family obligation, but I'm glad to, I'm so happy to be able to talk to you all about the social work compact. Just to answer a couple of your questions, first of all, overall OPR is very supportive of compacts. This will be one of 6. 4 were adopted last year. And you'll be hearing about the occupational therapy compact later this morning. So that, we generally very strongly support these agreements. What they are is really a contract between the states. So that's what the legislation reflects, right? It's a negotiated contract. I was on the development committee for the social work compact when it was in its very early stages. I worked with the Council for State Governments and 10 other states to help kind of develop what the standards should be in an interstate licensure compact for social workers. Once that's done, the compact is vetted with all the states, the associations, et cetera, to come to this final contract language. And then every state, just like a contract, when you're entering into a party, can amend it. So you're signing the contract of the state to participate in the compact by adopting this law. There's a lot of similarities between compacts, as Katie noted. The commission is very consistent. It is a third-party entity that governs the data, makes sure adopts rules for the implementation of who's eligible and who isn't for the multi-state license. But as always, if somebody's not eligible for that multi-state license, they can get a home state license. The social work compact, there's different models of how compacts work. There's a privilege model that we'll be hearing more about later with the occupational therapy compact. But for the social work compact, it's the multi-state, as you heard from Katie. So once somebody gets a multi-state license, they can practice in any member state without paying any money, without notifying that state they're practicing there. That's kind of the nurse licensure compact model too. Is that, once you get this multi-state license from your home state, you can go anywhere and practice there. A quick update on the number of states. So right now, there are 4 states that have currently, as of yesterday, joined the compact. When we testified in the House, it was 1. There have been 3 since then, and there's 23 considering. There's not really a huge rush to be one of the first 7. The first 7 you know, once 7 have adopted, it triggers the creation of this compact. So there's not just one member state. But if we adopt the compact and become a member of the compact, we are participating in the commission. We have a right to be in the delegate. So even if we're not the first 7, we'll be part of those commission discussions and rulemaking, et cetera. So we're very generally supportive of the compact. It does, as Nolan noted, have a significant financial impact on OPR. Because of the way this model is structured, the cost of implementing. So right now, the professions in the licensed professions in the state are responsible for paying for their own regulation through their licensing fees. So you can imagine if the licensee is instead paying for a compact license, or somebody who is out of state who previously had to purchase a Vermont license to practice here no longer has to, that's a loss in revenue to OPR. There are ways to address that, that, you know, we would love to keep talking about but we don't want that financial burden to be an enemy to good policy. And this is really good policy. It facilitates in telehealth, as you noted, Senator Lyons, and it facilitates interstate practice. It reduces a huge burden of continuing education. So people who are licensed in multiple states have to pay a significant amount and spend a significant amount of time annually, biannually on continuing education courses, and this would alleviate that burden and allow patients to access specialists and a greater number of social workers. So OPR really is very supportive of it, and we hope we can come to some solution on the funding.
Thank you. Questions? So there were some questions earlier. Did you want to follow up with any of the questions you had for OPR?
Yeah, sure. Just one question. Thank you, Lauren. Good testimony all the way around. Just by chance, are there any differences in qualifications between states that are potentially members of the compact as far as like qualifying a social worker that are significant enough to cause disruption from an OPR perspective?
Not really. So the variation for social workers is pretty limited. They all have to have an ASWB accredited, or no, CSWE accredited degree. So the education is standard. The variation typically happens around supervised practice and supervision hours, and that's a minimal variation. There is also some discussion, and this is why it's important, I think, for that, you know, development process to occur about testing and examinations, whether an examination should be required for clinical work. The ultimate decision was there's 3 kind of pathways to get in, but because everybody is going to, in order to have this multi-state license, people from any state are going to have those qualifications, and those qualifications very closely mirror what Vermont already requires for licensure. It really won't impact Vermont licensees that significantly.
Okay. Any others?
No.
Good. Any other questions? Wow, good work. Thank you. Thank you, Lauren. And I guess I had a thought earlier, but it's not something that's immediately, you don't need to respond to immediately, and I'll maybe think of how to frame the question a little bit better when we move ahead with the bill. Senator Hardy.
I do have one quick question. Hey, Lauren, I know you all OPR is working on a sort of report that I believe is due next session related to all of the mental health kind of professions. Are social workers included in that?
They are. They won't. I think that compacts will be a footnote to that bill. I don't foresee that the changes to that bill, to that study, I don't foresee that the changes recommended in that study will make it so our home state licensees aren't eligible for these interstate licenses, or B, that there won't be a pathway to kind of getting those licenses. So we're looking at streamlining our internal processes and administration. We're looking at supervision requirements. We're looking at barriers to licensure in Vermont. I can't see us departing so far from the national norm for these professions, both for compact reasons, but also even if somebody's not part of a compact, if they want to move to a different state, if we have incredibly radically different standards for licensure here, they're going to have to reapply in that other state. So it's, as we do our studying, as we have done this process, we're looking to what other states are doing to make it consistent, which will facilitate these compacts still being available.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. This is good. So we're set for now on this bill, and we're going to go offline until Jen Carvey gets here and we will